Agreed. And speaking of the seventh seed spot, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets interesting.
This is where things are going to get interesting because I think the Bengals, they don't have a chance of winning the AFC North. I will never say that. I don't think that their offense is good enough for that, especially with teams like the Steelers and the Ravens. Their defense just being kind of monstrous. And like we said before, once the Ravens get up, they just, you know, go off and
you're in
go
trouble at
after
that
a
point.
quarterback all the time. Steelers are just going to suffocate you. But the Bengals have made almost all the right moves this offseason. And I can explain by just saying when they had the opportunity to pick up a linebacker, the Browns linebacker at that, they didn't overpay him. I think that was really smart. And instead, what they decided to do was find a eventual replacement for Geno Atkins because he's not getting any older or any younger.
He is, in fact, getting much older.
Yeah, he's getting much older, in fact. He's like 32, I believe.
Yep.
Which is crazy to think that both Carlos and Geno, two of the best defensive players on that team, are getting way older now. And it's kind of scary to think that we're heading to a place where if we don't start fixing things, we're going to be laughing stock for
we're gonna be the Browns for a few years.
Yeah. And the thing that gives me hope is Joe Burrow. He is more like Joe Daddy to me.
Oh my gosh.
This guy literally sweeps people off your feet. If you just watch the playoff games that he played in for college, you cannot tell me this guy is not the next coming
Trash
of Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. He just puts it right on the money every time. I don't know how he does it. Don't know how someone can be this perfect at such a young age. But literally back shoulder throws every single time, right on the money. And I know it probably won't help that we don't have an off season for him to continue to develop and make those connections. But these receivers that we have, we might have the best receiving core in all of football. We got T. Higgins, we got AJ Green, we got Tyler Boyd, John Ross. Like, no one's going to be able to cover all four at once.
If John Ross actually decides to show up and play.
Of course, it all depends on if people are healthy, but you can't ever predict them not to be healthy. So the only thing that I have a question mark with is our linebackers, which we have 4 new linebackers after the draft, and all of them might not work out, but I know at least one of them will at least have starting potential. And we already have Jermaine Pratt.
Yep.
And as long as we keep developing that section of our team, I think everything else is pretty much set. We've redone our corner position. We've redone the safety. We've redone the defensive line. Next season is probably our season. Legit, we have a chance of going 7-9 and making it.
You know, real quick, with the linebacker situation, I'm actually really excited to watch Logan Wilson play because I saw him. I saw his highlights in Wyoming. Obviously, I didn't really watch a whole lot of games because other than people in Wyoming who really watches Wyoming games. But you know, I saw him do some things that I'm like, if he can do that while playing with the Bengals, I think he can really have potential to be that next guy who kind of runs the defense, kind of not necessarily running the defense, being like a veteran, but being that core guy that they need to kind of command the middle of the defense to stop runs and stop things like Lamar Jackson doing that pirouette crap that he did on us last year that we got absolutely smoked on. That was everywhere for like a month that we had to sit and watch.
And I'm not going to lie, last season, only keeping 1 or 2 linebackers on our team, I have no idea what that's all about.
Yeah,
I understand the philosophy of you only keep your best players, but man, that was a huge mistake, especially when it came to playing Lamar Jackson. We could not stop him whatsoever.
You see, you can keep your best players, but there's only one problem with that. If your best, say, like 11 players, if 8 of those best players you have are D linemen, defensive linemen can't stop tight ends going over the middle. Defensive linemen can't stop receivers coming over the middle. Like, that's not their job. Yeah, you have some formations in some plays where your defensive end maybe will drop back because he's like right outside the linebacker, kind of edge rusher guy. sometimes they can drop back, but at the end of the day, if you have those guys that are like core defensive linemen, like the front three, defensive linemen, if you have those core front three, they, yeah, you can switch them out and like you can rotate, keep guys fresh, which is a good thing which the Bengals used to do when we had a good defensive setup, when we would just rotate guys, and that's when our defense was really good, when we just keep guys fresh, rotate. But there's only a certain number of guys you can actually play, because at the end of the day, if you only have, say, Carlos or Gino in for, say, 7-8 plays in the first quarter, and then 4 plays in the second quarter, and then you try to play them a little more in the second half because the other guys were getting more reps and they're kind of tired. There's still only a certain amount of guys you can still play, even if those guys get like little reps, like four reps or whatever in a quarter, which is not likely to happen because you got to keep rotating them. But a rotation is really good, but you have to kind of limit that rotation to, say, 2 or 3 team core guys on your D line. So when you only have like 2 linebackers that you keep, if either of those guys don't work out the way you want them to, or one of them gets hurt, then you're kind of scrambling, going back to the drawing board, saying, "Hey, what can we do? Who are we gonna have to pick up? We need to look on the free agency list, see who's there."
You get a Sean Williams playing linebacker, and we
exactly
how well that went last season. It was not good. And I know he actually did play safety, but more than 50% of his snaps were in the box.
Yeah,
he basically played
safety. He was a blitzing safety. 100%.
Yeah. And the good thing is, not only do I like the Logan Wilson linebacker pick, I like Akeem Davis-Gaither, and I like Marcus Bailey too. All 3 of those guys, I think, have real potential to start one way or another. I think they can all 3 of them, make impacts right away. I'm most excited to see what they do with ADG. That's Akeem Davis-Gaither.
Yep.
And I think what they're trying to move forward with is changing our defensive scheme. And there's a lot of rumors saying that we're going to go to a 3-4 defense, which that would be wonderful if we did.
Hallelujah, we have a middle linebacker.
We actually have a middle linebackers now. And I can't imagine, like, just to put this in perspective so people at home understand. So we have Geno Atkins and DJ Reader. Both of them garner double team worth protection.
Yeah, double team protection, yeah.
We have Carlos Dunlap and Carl Lawson. Both of them are more like, they're going to go after the quarterback. They're going to get to him. I know Carlos Dunlap did really well in the run game, but can you imagine him fresh, always running at the quarterback? Akeem Davis-Gaither and Sam Hubbard, both of those guys can play on the edge too, as the off linebacker roles.
We already know that Sam Hubbard is dangerous. Like, he can go in and do exactly what you need him to.
Yeah, and then on top of that, Marcus Bailey and Logan Wilson are both middle linebacker prototypical players.
Mm-hmm.
We've just totally revamped our defense. If you switch to a 3-4, I cannot see us ever giving up more than 6 yards on a run play. With DJ Reader and Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, Sam Hubbard, Carl Lawson, ADG, Marcus Bailey, and Logan Wilson all going after it. I mean, and plus we've got the other safety that we just picked up, Von Bell.
Yeah.
And Trey Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander, they're going to be playing outside corner and that nickel corner. Those guys are really good in the run defense too. Like, we literally we saw what happened when we played Lamar Jackson. We're like, never again. We went for guys that could stop the run, and we also went after versatile linebackers that could cover on pass plays. And I believe, honestly, that we could be a dark horse top 10 defensive team. These players all together, if they end up being really talented, like Marcus Bailey doesn't get hurt because he's a second round talent.
Yep.
If ADG doesn't get hurt because he was more like a second, third round talent as well. And Logan Wilson, if he takes that leadership role and commands the middle of this team. We haven't had that since like early 2014 Vontaze. Vontaze has been in and out of the lineup. You know, he was good, and he was great for us in the playoff game, by the way. Fun fact. He did not lose us that playoff game.
When he destroyed people and then decided to argue with people and got us forever penalties, you know.
Not his fault. But anyways.
Not his fault at all. Not his fault at all. No, never.
It wasn't. Anyways, this team is really good. I'm telling you, you're going to be surprised. Any of the viewers out there watching, you will be surprised when this team plays well on defense.
You know, one thing I kind of want to get at real quick. It's kind of underrated with DJ Reader and those guys in the middle. It's really underrated needing to double team people. A lot of people, you don't really think about that. Like I'd just say as a casual fan of just watching football, you never really like pay a lot of attention. When you have to double team guys, especially if you have to double team more than one, that leaves a linebacker wide open for a play. That means they're gonna have to double off the linebacker, which means they both start on the D lineman there, on say the D tackle or the nose guard. They'll be both on him, and then they have to push him back far enough to get to the secondary, and then break off onto that guy in the secondary, which is going to be your linebackers or say blitzing safety or whatever you want to have, whatever you have you. So if Logan Wilson or ADG, either of those guys, because I know that Marcus Bailey has the potential to be really good, but since he was 7th round, I'm just going to leave him.
Yeah. Injury history too, so that's fair.
So I'm going to leave him out for right now. But if either of those guys or anybody that we have in the secondary from pickups during the offseason, if any of those guys, they'll come free now, because if our D linemen garner those double teams, when you get those double teams, and it's kind of underrated where offensive linemen, it's really actually a lot harder than you think it would be to get off a double team and go to the linebackers, because the linebackers are always watching what's happening in the backfield. They're watching play flow, where stuff's going. They're watching offensive linemen's feet, because offensive linemen got to reach a certain way to get to a guy to make sure they have the edge on him. If, say, they're running a pitch to the outside to the left, offensive linemen will start by going to the left and kind of stepping that way and kind of trying to block people off from there. So if you get that double team and the linebackers can read that, especially if you have really good reading linebackers, they can shut down a run game easy. If you have to double team a couple guys on the front, because breaking off that double team to get to a faster linebacker, a guy who can actually move and then make plays, it's not as easy as it sounds. Of course, it sounds like just go and do it, but it's really not.
And not to mention that both DJ Reader and Geno Atkins have multiple times broken through double teams. So can you imagine both of them on the line at the same time?
Yeah, they'll go out there, kill double teams, and regardless, even if they miss the double team and they get to the safety or to the linebackers, that's going to leave Geno or DJ Reader just a free shot at whoever's running the ball, whoever has the ball. And then if they don't break those, it is really an underrated part of the game, forcing a double team. Because when you force a double team, you just ruin schemes. Because you'll have schemes where a guy's supposed to just automatically miss the D tackle. Like you'll have a nose tackle and your guard and your center are supposed to double him. If that guy in the middle doesn't need a double team, your left guard can just go straight up to a linebacker, and that shuts your linebacker off, which then leaves the hole wide open for people like Le'Veon Bell who are going to watch the bowl, or running backs, like any of the running backs in the league, like Saquon, or any of those guys, even the Ravens game, which is kind of I'd say more of like a kind of not really option, but like option football gets hard when you have to double people kind of thing. So you'll start to run the option. Say Lamar goes back and tries to read the end, but then you have a guy coming straight at you from the middle needing the double team, and then those linebackers have time to read, and they can get over there to stop Lamar if he goes over there. And especially with Logan Wilson, like I know he can make tackles in open field. Like he's not the absolute craziest tackler in open field, but he can make those plays. Like he's going to make a lot of those plays.
Yeah. So, and going back to the double team thing, the thing is with Geno Atkins, him being older, with him being older, and DJ Reader going to be his eventual replacement, that gives us the option to start rotating guys in and out again.
Yeah, like how we did when we were good, yeah.
And that gives us the option to stack the zero techniques on either side and just blow up the front of the offensive line. This is going to be what should have been when Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald got together.
Yeah,
this will be what it should have been. And people, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be fun to watch them. They're going to create a lot of turnovers, and it's going to be fun to watch this defense. Now, the offensive side, the only concern that we have is this offensive line, which a lot of people are saying.
My massive point.
A lot of people are saying, oh, Jonah Williams is coming back. But we've never seen him play a single offensive snap. He might have been the best offensive tackle last season, but offensive tackle in the NFL nowadays is one of the riskiest positions to draft. It's one of the most biggest busts in NFL right now. So we have no idea how good John Williams
and see,
is.
that's kind of where I come at when I say that I don't know about Joe Burrow. It's not his physical abilities. It's not his brain. Like I know he himself can perform. It's not him that I'm worried about. It's that offensive line. Like you said, Jonah Williams coming back. When you have tackles, look, your tackles are the guys who have to block guys like J.J. Watt, T.J. Watt, Clowney, like those outside rushers who are just fast. And they got to have a brain about them to be able to set fast enough, just kick back fast enough to keep those guys from getting to your quarterback. And when you have that, plus your inside guys with all the problems we've had inside, we've shored it up, which I'm starting to get a little more okay with what we're doing. But with what we had going last year, our inside guys just gave up pressure. And even if you wouldn't really think about it all that much if you're just watching a game, but even with your nose or your center getting pushed back by the nose, even if he's not getting to the quarterback, when he starts to get that guy close and closer and closer, your quarterback starts to panic a little bit. He's like, oh, I'm going to have to get rid of this. I know what's coming. I know I'm going to have to get rid of this.
To kind of stem off of that, Joe Burrow, he's good and he can run outside the pocket, but that's going to be the problem. He's going to want to run around a lot, and he's not going to want to set his feet, and that's when you're the least accurate. Now, he kind of broke the laws of football by being able to throw perfect on the run. But we don't know how bad this line will be. If it's anything like it was last season, I don't expect him to be all sunshine and rainbows. You know, he's going to have growing pains too. So this team could easily go 7-9 with their schedule. Yeah. But that would give them legitimacy in making the playoffs
I have a real problem. So, yeah, we know Joe Burrow can throw and run and all that. But, again, the guys he was playing against while in college, we've argued this point many times, but they're just not that same level as, like, T.J. Watt when he first came in. Yeah, he was really good, and it was just, like, raw talent, basically. He came in, raw talent. They coached him up for a little while, and now he's scary. And that's kind of how I feel. It's like Joe Burrow is going to come in, and my main problem is I know 3-4 years down the road, if we protect him, Joe Burrow could be lights out. He could be that Patrick Mahomes. He could be that Aaron Rodgers. He could be absolutely insane. But the problem is if we don't protect him for the first couple of years, it's going to start getting to him. It's going to hit his conscience, hit his psyche, whatever.
We'll have an Andrew Luck all over him.
Yeah, exactly. So then if he starts getting hit, starts getting hurt, not like sitting out hurt, but like those bruises, those bumps that really kind of hurt, you'll have in 3 or 4 years, you'll have a guy who's just scared. He's in the backfield. Even if after that you shore up the line, say 4 years down the line, you shore up the line, it's going to take a little while after that for him to get into his head that, oh, I have time. I can actually sit back and take a 5-step drop and throw and things like that. Whereas like with Andy Dalton last year, I know you're going to disagree with me, but Andy Dalton, he's not going to win you. Like he himself by himself is not going to win you championships, but he could legitimately play. But you had to where, and especially it was really evident last season when they started taking him out and started rotating in what we call noodle arm.
Good old noodle arm Finley.
Yeah. So it was real apparent and then they brought him back in, and of course it was against some lackluster teams where they got the wins with the Dolphins, or not the Dolphins, the Browns, and like
The
games
Jets,
games like that where it was like lackluster teams. But when he came back in, he actually started playing a little better. I think a lot of it was because he knew he was going to leave, and he knew he wasn't going to be in Cincinnati. He needed to just shop himself around a little bit, if you know what I mean. But like Andy, like if he would have had, so a lot of the time he'd take a 3-step drop and then he'd know he'd have to get rid of the ball. And the problem with that, especially with AJ being out all last season, is that AJ was the only guy who you could confidently throw it to after that 3-step drop, and you could just launch it up to him, and you're like, okay, AJ 98% of the time is going to come down with a lot of those. But when you have Tyler Boyd out running the one routes, and that's another thing that kind of gets to it, is you get used to as a quarterback. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm a big guy. I haven't played quarterback. I haven't played receiver. But when you have a certain receiver quarterback combo, you get used to that, and you get into the flow of things. And say like Big Ben with Antonio Brown, like they knew what each other's tendencies were. They knew what they could do. When you all of a sudden take Antonio Brown out and then just push Juju into that role, it's going to take a little while. There's going to be growing pains and everything else. And if you stack that with an offensive line that can't really protect all that well and all that, then you have Tyler Boyd out here who's trying to make those plays that AJ was, and he just can't, because one, he doesn't have the time to make some of those plays, because AJ is
a freak.
Yeah, he's an athletic freak. Like, I don't know how he does some of the stuff he does. But you'll have Tyler Boyd out here who's in his own right a really good receiver, but I just don't think he's that number one guy, at least for the Bengals. Like, I think he could be a number one receiver somewhere else. But and even with Andy leaving, I think he could even try to be a number one in Cincinnati. But the thing is, he has to get that kind of flow going with the quarterback so that they know what he's going to do. They know what his tendencies are, how he's going to kind of play.
He reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Sanders, and he played mostly like slot, and he was the number 2 guy, but he was extremely good. But as soon as he had to go into that number 1 role, you just see a decline in production. And it's mostly because you're being lined up outside, and, you know, the defense only has to key you, and they stop you, and the offense is done.
And that's where I think the Bengals have a little bit of an advantage, is especially if AJ can come back next year all healthy. And that's another topic, is freaking AJ last year saying he was going to come back. I don't really blame him for not coming back, because, like, if you're not 100%, why would you come back to a team that has no chance of winning anything? But with Auden Tate even out there, like Auden Tate, we saw glimpses last year where he would make like great plays. He'd make a diving catch or a stretching catch, and then we'd see sometimes when you're like, was he really putting in full effort there? Was he really trying there? And it's kind of like the same way with John Ross. John Ross, a lot of his problems, I think, are more of effort plays, where he'll have the ball, and of course we know about his inability to hold on the ball because he's got baby hands or something. I don't know what's going on there, but he'll go for a pass, and he'll have the ball. He could go up for it, and then you see it just kind of sail a little bit, and then it gets picked. And then he doesn't necessarily try his hardest to make that tackle, which I'm like, I guess you don't really want to hurt yourself all that much, because we know you have an injury history, and you're kind of like in the back of your mind, do I want to go after that? But it's still, I think with our receivers, we have a really good chance of being good. But like I've been saying forever, if that offensive line can perform, I think we could have been pretty decent last year if our offensive line would have performed. Because even with Auden Tate and all those guys, we still had good receivers like Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, John Ross when he kind of played a little bit. And we all know that Joe Mixon, in my opinion, Joe Mixon is like one of the top 5 running backs in the league right now. Easily. Yeah. Easily. I think if our offensive line holds up, we could have one of the most dynamic offenses on the planet, where we can just do literally anything. But that's the problem, is what you got to kind of wonder about is if the offensive linemen that they picked up, that they kind of shored up the line with, are those guys more of like passing linemen, or are they running, or are they kind of a mix of both? Like they can do both pretty well. If they can do, I think if they can just run block very well, that we could have one of the best offenses period, because Joe Mixon is just that guy. Like he is hard nosed, all out every play, doing what he's got to do. And you know that by when he like gets the first downs, he stands up, starts being like, "Yeah, first down." Like y'all can't handle this kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
if we can get that going, like we saw it at the end of the season last year. Our offensive line started doing a little bit better, and you started seeing Joe Mixon getting up there in numbers, getting up there like 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards kind of games. And if we can have those early in the season into midseason, that's going to assure it up to where, and another underrated kind of part of the game, when you can run the ball like that, your receivers start to get open. They just start to get open because you'll have linebackers who are playing more heavy into the run, and you'll have corners who are like not necessarily playing into the run, but kind of like shading inside to where they're like, okay, I got to watch for the run outside, watch for runs inside, kind of get to where I need. And then your safeties are going to be pulled down more where they're going to be like, okay, I got to play. And then all of a sudden you throw a bomb to AJ with Joe Burrow throwing a bomb to AJ down the field. AJ's going to be wide open because guys are trying to like play him a little more in. And then all of a sudden AJ just burns him. And like John Ross, if John Ross can stay healthy and stop dropping the ball with, like, dude needs to stop eating popcorn before the game or whatever he's got going. He needs to stop all that. But if you can get him just burning guys on the field, and that's kind of what we originally drafted him for, John Ross, is to just burn people because we all saw his freaking combine speed where he was just blazing down the field.
Yeah, we saw what Tyreek Hill could do, and we're like,
ooh, we need that. So if we can get John Ross healthy, even if we don't pass him the ball as much, like just knowing in the back of the mind of the defensive
space.
Guys. Yeah, he'll create space. He just goes. Like even if we just sprint him down the field, that's going to create space for Auden Tate and T. Higgins, which we haven't really talked a whole lot about, which I'm pretty excited for T. Higgins. Like we got a little bit of sleeper there, I think.
Yeah,
a lot of people kind of underestimated him. So if we have Higgins out there, we have Boyd, we have AJ, we have Auden Tate, we have John Ross. Like that's 5 receivers who, minus injury, legitimately could be number ones. Like John Ross is kind of the most iffy there, but like all those guys are like legitimate. If they played for 5 separate teams, they could be number 1 receivers. So I think our offense has the opportunity. I just really, I know that Joe Burrow can throw on the run and that he can do this, that, and the other, but
we just need to see what type of level that he can perform at.
Yeah.
During the preseason. If he can't, then it's going to be a long season. It's going to be a hard season to watch because I know he's good. That's the problem, is that we all know that he's good, but the team will fail him if so. It won't be his fault. And another thing to talk about, and we haven't talked about it all yet, it's the coaching and how important coaching is.
You trying to make me angry.
Oh, I'm trying to make you angry because how can you go nickel formation all season long? How can you run a 5-2?
You can see, my thing is you can do that kind of stuff, but you can't just solely do that. Like you have to sprinkle in some other things. And even from the outset of the season, even though Zach Taylor didn't just come out like at a press conference and be like, we're going to run a nickel defense all the time and nothing else, he kind of did that. Like after the 3rd week, people were like, we got, okay, so week 1 against Seattle, you did pretty good. You knew what you were doing. Week 2, they absolutely torch you. Week 3, they come out and torch you again, running that same defense. So teams are like, well, we can just go off of what they did week 2 and week 3, and we can beat the Bengals. Like that's an easy win on the schedule. And I think one of Zach Taylor's main problems, and I hope he can kind of start to fix this, is that he is obviously a kind of a one-dimensional kind of guy. And I think that comes with being like a young coach. You don't necessarily know like exactly how to switch it up. And that kind of falls to your coordinators then to kind of get with the coach and be like, look, we can't necessarily do this every time.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem, is that he's play calling on offense.
Yeah.
Which is, I want to still give him time because he still deserves some time. But from what I saw last season, he's not making very many changes at halftime. So reminiscent of Marvin. But the worst part is the initial game plans are even worse than Marvin Lewis's game plans.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's even possible.
How does that happen?
I don't understand how that's possible. And there were some games where it just looked like, like with the Jets, with the Browns, like they had something going. And, during the Seahawks game, he didn't try to force anything. I'd love to see that more. He just wasn't doing it though, like throughout the season. He wasn't shifting to the games
Yeah.
where the game was going. Like I saw it from the Seahawks game and I thought, oh wow, we've got a guy who just doesn't care if the defense is gonna give him this. He's gonna just keep doing this to him.
See, that's what I kind of I kind of want to be in like Zach Taylor's head for that, because with week 1, we watched it, and I want to know if he didn't necessarily do as much of the play calling, or if he didn't do as much as something else. And then when they lost, he was like, "Okay, I see what kind of how we need to go. I want to be that guy that makes those calls." But like week 1, we were molding to what we needed to do, kind of changing it up a little bit, changing this, changing that. And then once we hit week 2, we were like, okay, we just had a bad game. We were like, well, we just had a bad game. That was kind of a fluke type thing. We saw how we did last week. We're okay at 0-2. We're fine. But then you get to the 3rd week and you realize we're doing the same thing we did week 2 when we got stomped. It's like, so you get stomped in then week 3, and then you go to week 4, and again we're still doing the same thing. You're like, where's the week 1 guy we had, where we were just changing things up, kind of tweaking things,
going to the flow of the game.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to absolutely just completely steamroll at halftime your game plan. You just need to like make little tweaks here, little tweaks there, and kind of that's what you have the guys up in the booth for. They watch the game, they watch everything that's going on, especially when it's like offense to defense, like you're on offense and your guys are watching the defense. That's their main job, is to watch that defense, kind of see where the defense is playing to, see what their tendencies more are of this game, because you can watch all the film you want, but tendencies do tweak game to game. Like when you're playing, say you're playing a team who likes to just bomb the ball deep. Of course, your guys are going to play off more. They see that, they're going to play off more.
And speaking of that week 1 game, just throw that out there. Definitely wasn't a fumble. That was an incomplete pass. The very end of the game.
Bro, as Bengal fans, I feel like we get screwed on.
We get so
the
screwed
the
on
rest
some
hate us. But people are gonna say, "Oh, well, you guys are just fans, so you're more biased." I don't know. I've seen some calls for the Steelers that I don't know about that. And that's not even just playing against Bengals. That's playing against like other teams, and I'm like, all right. I don't know about that, refs, but
yeah. And see, the thing is about the coaching, I feel like you can't really judge a lot off of year 1. You judge a lot of year 2 because they've had time to install their playbook. They've got guys that know what the playbook is now. We don't have necessarily the talent up front to make individual plays, because I think in the beginning we were doing a lot of zone running concepts, and Seahawks just stuffed us every single play. And a lot of it is because we weren't making the individual plays on the line.
Yep.
A lot of it is just like one-on-one. You got to get your guy and square up on him. And also the whole reason why we were kind of in that game to begin with was because of how stubborn the Seahawks defense was. They would not get out of their base 4-3 defense, so we could just throw on them all day. They weren't respecting John Ross either. So we just kind of were like, hey, NFL, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use John Ross if you don't, cover him well.
Yep.
Anyways, I want to see more malleable play calls. I want to see more adjustments at halftime. I saw a lot of it during the first game, and it just continued to get worse and worse throughout the season until about week 14, week 15. When they played the Jets, I thought, they've changed up their offense somehow. They started to think, let's change the actual scheme of this team so then we can get Joe Mixon going. And they realized, oh, hey, we get Joe Mixon rolling, we're going to be pretty good.
He's a legit running back.
He's a legit running back. And I think that's going to be key for this season. We have to get him moving. And we got to, even though we have this amazing receiving core, we got to limit the amount of times we're throwing 30 times a game. We got to get Joe Mixon 20-plus carries. We got to be able to push on the offensive line so we can do more play action, get Joe Burrow running outside the pocket for play action, use that ability to throw on the run, and we'll be okay.